of our This is the second of our three-part communications training series. Again, I'm Kimberly Brown, and I'm Senior Director at LAGRANT Communications, and it's my pleasure to present to you Key Messages 101. If you recall, in our first session, we discussed earned media, paid media, and how diverse media plays into both of those lanes. We spent our time focused on best practices as to how your organizations can utilize social media in your communications outreach and how you can build effective target lists. So today we're going to talk about developing key messages for your communications, which is all a part of your goal. So to set the stage, again, in our first session, I asked you to start thinking about 3 questions, and I'm going to remind you of those questions. They're questions I just want you to think about as you go through this whole series. And it's, how important is communications to your organization's mission? How much does your organization need to communicate with media to meet your goals? And lastly, what are your communication goals? I want you to continue thinking, as I said, about those things as we talk about key messages, because it all works together. So today our goals are to improve understanding of what messages improve understanding of messages and what you need to communicate. We want to help identify who you are communicating with as part of your work. And then lastly, enhance how you are communicating to ensure that you're meeting those goals that we're talking about. So the first step when approaching any communications project is message development. Messaging is step 1 of any communications effort. It's the underpinning of all communications. It refers to how your organization talks about itself, how it values itself, how it sees itself, and how it wants other people to see it. So there are a proof set of key messages that are, you can call them key points or messages, and they're basically what your organization uses to communicate about something with your target audience. So it's pretty much your go-to when someone asks you, what does your organization do? You have these key messages, you can refer to that, you know these backwards and forwards, you know who you are. Some people might think that a mission statement is the same as a key message, but it's not. So I want you to think about that as a mission statement is more a statement that tells you why your organization exists, pretty much why you're here on earth, what it is you do, whereas a message explains and amplifies why that purpose matters. So I'm going to use Vaccinate All 58 as an example when we talk about this mission versus key statements. So Vaccinate All 58, their mission is they want you to keep your immunity strong and strong with the protective updated COVID-19 booster. So basically, they want you to get boosted, right? So their key messages then become getting vaccinated and boosted lowers the risk of contracting, spreading, and severely getting ill from COVID-19. Another key message is keeping our immunity strong with the updated booster will help avoid the worst COVID-19 has to offer, including hospitalization and death. So you can see that the mission statement tells you what they want, and their key messages tells you why they want it. So think about that when you're thinking about your key messages in relationship to your mission, because I'm sure most of you probably already have your missions. So for this section, I'm going to set a few goals for us. One, I'm going to show you how messages are the foundation of any communication effort. They're your number 1 tool in communicating what you need and what you want to achieve your goals. I'm going to show you the structure of the key message through an easy rule. It's the power of 3. You might have heard this before in different contexts, but we're going to relate it to communication, the power of 3. And then lastly, I'm going to show you why a strong, clear message can help then be used in any communication setting to achieve your goal. Once you have your key message, you can use it for pretty much all of those goals and all of those outreach efforts that you have. Using key messages will be enormously helpful to you. Strong, clear messages are the most important, strongest asset that you have to tell your story in an effective way across all tools and all audiences. It allows your organization to speak in one voice and to be much more impactful. And again, everybody has these key messages, so you're all speaking the same way, or you're all speaking from the same core key messages. So somebody's not saying one thing, another person's not saying another thing. You have these core key messages that everybody can work from and be in sync. They're going to be incredibly powerful in organizing your force. And again, everybody's going to be on the same page because everybody understands what you're trying to accomplish and what you want people to know about your organization. Once you have a clear grasp on key messages, it helps you and your organization stay organized and focused on what you need. You know, a lot of times things come up, different projects come up, and it might take you away from your core, but these key messages will allow for you to stay consistent with your core as other things come up. And with key messages, just because you have a set of key messages for your organization doesn't mean that if you have a particular project that you can't develop key messages for that project. You can have key messages for whatever it is you need to do. But today we're pretty much talking about how to develop key messages in relationship to your organization. And again, they help inform and educate you on the topics and issues that are most critical for the work that you do. It's your guide. So now that I've talked about key messages, why they're important, etc., let's just first define it. You know, what is a key message? It's something important to note. It's a key message, or I should say something important to note is that a key message is not a statistic or a data point. So it's information. So the key message isn't 9% of people XYZ. You know, it's more so people XYZ. You take the data point out of it because you want them to remember the information, not so much the number. Most of the information that you deal with every day is not a key message, okay? A key message is the main idea or the most important information that you want your audience to remember. Simple. It's really not involved. It's a really simple message. So let's break it down. When we talk about power of three, talk about key messages, I mentioned that power of three. So if nothing else, I want you to remember that number as we talk through today's session, because you're going to hear it a couple times. The secret of any effective communication is the power of three, because we find things easier to follow when we can break it down and remember it in 3 key points. You might not know that, but really that is a proven fact that that's the way that the human mind works. So you should never have more than 3 key messages. In some cases, you might only have 1 or 2. You don't have to have 3 just because I say that number. But the theory is you should never have more than 3. But I will say that in some instances, you might. And I'll use Vaccinate 58 as an example because there was so much going on with the pandemic that we had multiple key messages that we were working with. Now, at any given time, we might just be using 3, but we definitely have more than 3 developed because it was just that type of campaign. But I would say for most of your organizations, that 3 is the most that you should have. And again, this is because research has shown that this is the limit that the brain can absorb at one time. It sounds kind of weird, but you know, our brains are interesting things. So we really just want to keep it simple as much as we can. Once you start looking at this 3, you'll start seeing it everywhere in marketing and pop culture. You know, you think about Snap, Crackle, Pop, the 3 little pigs, 3 blind mice, I came, I saw, I conquered. It's really subtle, but you'll see it more and more that marketers really do use that power of 3. So next, we're going to use that 3 when we're talking about the parts of the key message. So a key message really has 3 parts. You have your main idea, you have that proof of the main idea, and then you have the color or the call to action that you want people to take away from that main idea. It's important to know that your key messages can be brought to life in a number of ways. So, you know, it can be attention grabbing with headlines, with photos, with infographics. There's just not one way to do it. And we'll talk about a little bit later when we talk about ways to utilize your key message. So again, today, what I want you to remember from what I just talked about is 3 simple things. And the main thing is that simplicity is best. Your messages need to be simple, concise, compelling. That's it. And I think that, you know, you've heard this probably in many different lanes in your life. Simplicity is always the best way to go. It's the way, because people will get bored, people will lose interest, people will want to stop reading, whatever the case may be. So that's kind of something that you can apply across the board. Here are a couple ways that you can avoid your message not being simple, or I should say better, if these are a couple of things to think about as you're developing your key message. Don't use abbreviations. So a couple of examples of that is CDL, commercial driver's license. Some people might know what it is, some people might not know what it is, or CRM, customer relations management. You know, these are terms that might be not so commonly used. So we don't want people to have to go to Google to figure out what we're talking about. So if you are going to use something that does have abbreviation, write it out. Or if you're, the better thing to do is really remove them from the key messages, and it'll really help it keep it simple and compelling. 2, don't use jargon. You know, we want people to understand what you're saying. We want to present them with easy language that's easy to grasp. So we're going to keep it simple again. And don't try to convey complicated concepts in key messages, because a key message should just be a core idea. You want people to know it, simple, everyday language. That's it. They can find out more information if they want to, but this is just the key message that we're presenting to them. So again, number 2, ideas, not data. Stay away from data points, because people will forget them. You know, they can only really remember one idea. I don't want to act like people don't have the capability to remember multiple things, but it's been proven that the mind is pretty simple, and the mind wants information presented to us in a simple way. So when you're preparing key messages and you keep coming back to a data point, ask yourself, what does that data tell us? And why is that data important? Take that data, turn it into a key message without having to present that statistic that you think probably is going to make your case more compelling. You can really just make it compelling by conveying the idea of what that data point says. Third, the power of 3. Talked about this already. You know, for any area or topic, you should never have more than 3 messages, and they should be in 3 parts. We talked about it: the main idea, the proof, and then the color, what makes it memorable, the call to action. So today, I know just threw a lot at you with key messages, but today I actually do want to take a couple minutes and actually practice this. And it's just a really simple exercise that you all can take part of from your desk. And we can share a couple of the key messages that you come up with in the chat, and just take a look at them once you're finished. So the exercise I'm going to do today, and I'm not saying that this is how you should develop your key message, because you should, of course, put more thought into it, but this is a way to get your juices flowing and to kind of give you an idea of the type of way that you should, or the type of thinking that you should be utilizing when you're thinking of a key message. So I want you to grab a pen, piece of paper, or you can open up a Word document. It's going to be really simple. And once you do that, I want you to put your organization's name at the top of the paper. And I'm going to give you a few seconds to open Word or get a piece of paper, whatever the case may be. So once you write your organization's name at the top, I want you to put 3 verbs that describe your organization underneath it, and then 3 adjectives that describe your organization. And I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that. And I'm going to give you an example to help. The organization, the name I'm going to give you is New Life Gym. So my 3 verbs are encourage, promote, help. My 3 adjectives are healthy, active, and positive. Now, once you have that on your paper or on your computer, I want you to take that and I want you to use those verbs and those adjectives and turn that into a key message. And I'll give you an example based upon what I just gave you. So remember, I said New Life Gym. I said encourage, promote, help, healthy, active, and positive. So I've put that together to say New Life Gym promotes a healthy, active lifestyle for members. Our fully trained staff will provide you with the help and encouragement you need to make the positive changes you desire. So I'm going to give you a minute or two to put together something. And what I would like to do, just so that I'm not the only one talking today, is if we can have just a couple people raise their hand and share. We won't spend a lot of time on it, but I do want to hear what you guys come up with. So I believe that you can just unmute yourself. Is that right, Shira?
Yes, that is
Okay,
correct.
perfect. So once you guys get it going, if I see some hands raised, I'll just call on the person. You can unmute yourself and you can share with us what you developed. So let's just take a minute or two to do that.
Hi, Kimberly. If you're speaking to us, we're unable to hear you because you're muted.
Sorry about that. So this next module, I'll go back to this next module that we're going to talk about is communicating key messages with different audiences and tools consistently. And in your day-to-day, you're going to use key messages in a variety of ways with a variety of audiences through numerous tools. And so your goal is to communicate consistently, right? Your audience has several channels that they use for their communication. So you want to make sure that through all of those channels that your communication remains the same or that your key messages remain the same. Remember, it's important to have strong, clear messages that will unify your communication efforts, even if you use them in these different types of ways. So in this section, we're going to talk about how messages can be used in a variety of ways, but still tie back to the main idea that you're trying to convey. So commonly used tools for us in media or in communications are things that you probably see day to day, and you've heard these terms quite often: press releases, letters to the editors, events and media alerts, and PSAs, as well as group meetings. So we're going to talk about each of these individually and how you can utilize your key messages within each of these types of media or tools. So the first one is a press release, which I'm sure a lot of you have used before. It's one of the most common tools that we use in media, and it's used in a variety of ways. It talks about, usually, most of the time, I should say, it's announcing something. It's announcing new research, expanded program, a new employee, um, whatever it is, it's announcing something new. And that's the intent of a press release. It's a formal communication that may be published as is. So you'll see more formal tone in language. It's not written really from a human interest type of style of writing. It's more, here's the information, this is what's going on. Usually includes some quotes, probably from your leadership, maybe from some influencers or stakeholders that you might have that are talking about that announcement. For instance, if you're announcing a new employee, say they're announcing a new CEO, the president of the company might make a statement saying how excited he is for that or how excited they are for that person joining the organization. If you have a new product, it'll talk about the new product, and you probably have somebody quoted in it talking about why this new product or this new brand is great, what makes it great, and the excitement around the whole launch of the new brand. So again, it'll be more formal language. It's used when you have news that you want to share with multiple outlets at once. So it's not exclusive, whereas some media tools you're offering just to one media outlet as an exclusive piece with a press release. You're sending it to everybody in any type of media that's out there. And this can be done through you, through your own media outreach, or through news services, news wire services, which is something that a lot of big brands use when they have a press release. They put it out on the wire, so you'll see it on Yahoo. You'll see it. You'll see it appear on media outlets that might not really be targeted towards that audience. However, because it's going out in a mass way, it's just going everywhere. So it might go out and be published 200 plus times, which is great. So that's a lot of time. A lot of times when you do have press releases, that's how companies like to go about. For us smaller organizations, a lot of times we just pushing it out ourselves. So um, hoping that somebody might cover it. But you, again, going back to our first module when we were talking about knowing your media, you're going to have to know what media outlets will print press releases, because there are some out there that don't print press releases. So that'll be something that you'll discover as you do your research about who you're reaching out to and build your media list and understand your media outlets. So also it should be used when you have important news that's relevant to your audience. But what a release does is it allows for you to expand on your key messages and provide additional context. Like I said, and you'll put more information in it, you'll put some quotes in it, but remember that you still need to deliver your key messages within it. I will say that this is how a press release is traditionally used and should be used, but there are times that I know for some of my clients where a lot of diverse media, they do want these pre-written pieces, these bylines, these press releases, etc. But they always want it byline to somebody, meaning they want to be able to say, this story is by Dr. Such and Such, or this story is by such and such. You can't just send it to them without it being attributed to somebody. So sometimes um, when we don't have a spokesperson to attribute our bylines to, we will put it in a press release form. And it might not be breaking news, as it should be when you're using a news release, but we write it in such a way that it is a release. So I won't go all into that today, but just keep that in mind, that sometimes, you just have to know how to play with what you have, and be able to pivot if you need to. But in general, the rule is that press releases should be announcing new news. So here's the basic format of what a press release looks like. You're usually going to see the logo of the organization. You're going to have a contact here. Usually it's the press person. Sometimes it's not. It's whoever wants to receive any inquiries if someone sees this and wants to find out more information. Oh, I see a comment. Thank you. Yeah, a good press release can end up getting you some of the earned media attention, absolutely, from the reporter. Again, yeah, they like press releases. They like new information. So Absolutely. Thank you for that comment. Um, Nice headline. Definitely want to have a headline that's going to call attention to what it is that you want people to know the press release is about. It doesn't have to be a lot of fluff in it. It should really just be straightforward. This is what it is. This is one when it comes to a press release, it's less fluff and it's more facts. So, good headline. A lot of times with press releases, you will see a sub headline. You don't always have to put one in, but there sometimes is a sub headline. You'll have your date. That number is something CDP uses, but not normally on it. But usually it's just a date and you'll see for immediate release. And then there you go, you have your information. And you can look into, there is a format for press releases. You can look at AP style guide, or you can just Google and you can find the format that is traditionally written in. You're going to have the area, the city that the press release is coming from. So since CDPH is out of Sacramento, you see Sacramento. But for many of you, it might be Inglewood, it might be Los Angeles, it might be San Bernardino. It's whatever area that you're in. So that is a press release. Moving on to letters to the editor. This is another great tool. And what it is, it's a way to, one, again, build those relationships with your reporters because it shows that you're reading what they're writing and you're responding to it. But it also is a great tool to be able to talk about issues that are dear to your heart or that you want people to talk about. So it's a great way to increase awareness of the issues, again, that your organization is working for and is advocating for. Advocating for. Um, they're used to add depth or a different perspective to a topic already being covered by that outlet. You don't normally introduce new topics in a letter to the editor for a media outlet. So again, this is if you saw your editor writing about an issue that your organization, or it doesn't just have to be something to your organization, just something that you want to react to. And that's normally what a letter to the editor is. It's not just you bringing up something new out of the clear blue sky. It's something that you've already seen and that you want to just continue to have that conversation about. So what you'll see here is a letter that was in the Daily Breeze talking about pedestrian responsibilities. And it was in response to something that the editor had published. And so this person decided to write a letter to the editor. And a lot of times editors will publish it. Again, you need to know your paper, or you need to know your news outlet. Are they open to receiving letters from people or letters to the editors? Most of the time they are, but again, do your research, understand your news outlet, and understand if this is the appropriate way to reach out to them. You need to be able to add new information or perspective to an existing story. You just don't want to repeat what's being said by the outlet. You want to add color to it, you want to add context to it, and you want to add something to the conversation. Those are things that'll get it noticed by the editor and probably increase your chances of the editor actually publishing it. Again, it's not the time to offer new information. Just add a point of view. Just show that you're understanding and that you have an appreciation for the topic that's being discussed. And also, it doesn't have to come from you. It can come from your organization or even a community member. It might even be more compelling. We talked about that in the first series that when we were talking about your own social media outreach, and that a lot of times when you're advocating for your company or you want to communicate for your organization, that it might be more authentic if it comes from the organization. So you might write the letter to the editor, but you might want to have it come from your organization. Just a little, either way, that could be up to you, but just some different ways to think about it when you're trying to get attention. Um, Letters to the editors, again, they add depth to the current topic, adds a new perspective, offers a point of view. And also something to remember, it should be submitted within 24 hours of what you saw. So if you saw something last week and you want to write a letter to the editor this week, it's probably not going to get any attention because they've already moved on to the next item. I don't have bylines in here because I think that you guys will be using letters to the editors more than bylines, but I want to quickly touch upon it. I mentioned it earlier, that a byline is a story that you've written that's about the subject matter you want to talk about, and it's byline and attributed to someone. So it might be attributed to your CEO. If you have a spokesperson that is within your organization, it can be attributed to them. It might be attributed to a community leader who is affiliated with your association, with your organization, and who's open to letting a byline be attributed to them. For us, we write the bylines most of the time for our clients. We take those key messages, we take the look and tone that we know that they want to convey, and we include that in the story and then add the text to it to make it an actual story. And then we'll submit it to our client or submit it to the spokesperson and give them the opportunity to review it, make sure they're comfortable with the language. If they want to add something in there, that's fine, they add it in there, and then they approve it, and then we send it out. So the story is written from their perspective. So for instance, with COVID-19, we did a lot of that with doctors. Our spokespeople for that account is doctors because they're the ones who know what's going on with COVID. They're the experts. They can talk about what's in this vaccine, what the trials were all about, why you should trust it, and why you should get boosted. So we rely heavily on them, but they're busy people. So, we would write these stories for them, talking about all of these different factors. They'd make sure that it was accurate and on point, and then they would let us byline it to us, which is where we found a lot of our success because there's trust and there's authenticity in hearing from a doctor. So I say that to say, that's something else you might want to think about if you do have people on your staff that are writers or that are comfortable penning stories. But a letter to the editor is a easier way or a simpler way if you don't have that type of staff. The next commonly used tool is a media alert. A lot of you guys are probably doing events, trainings, whatever the case may be. You want to let people know about it. You want to put it out there in the universe. In the first section, one of the social media posts that I shared that I thought was really good was the one that was highlighting an event that went on where you were showing the games that were been played, the speakers, the PowerPoint, the overall atmosphere. So if you're doing something like that, but you want people to know about it beforehand to attend, you would do a media alert. Media alerts are really simple. It's not, paragraphs talking about it. It's who, what, when, why, period. Who to contact if you're interested in coming to it. So it's quick facts. They're used to invite media to events to receive news, such as a press conference. Not that it's news itself, but you're using it to let them know about it. It's very straightforward, plain language, presents itself with information. So a media alert is used for media when you want to get media to attend your event, but it's also, you can also use it. Again, we were talking about using social media smartly. You could put it on your social media and then it gets out to the masses of people. That is, if you're having something you want people to attend. But the way that we utilize that, we use them the most is when we're having an event that we want media to attend. So we're telling them the who, what, when, why. And usually with the who, if there's a compelling who, let's say that councilwoman such and such is going to be there, or if there's a celebrity or if there's an influencer that might drive traffic, you want to make sure that you put that in the who because that would be something that the media would be interested to say, oh, hey, this might be a media moment. I can get a picture with such and such, or there might be an opportunity for me to talk to this person because I would love to develop a story and they would be a great contributor, a great asset to the story. So that is some key information that you want to put in there. It should tease the news so that the media has an idea of what they're going to hear, but you don't want to give the news away, right? So you just want to tell them what the subject matter is. That's it. Because your goal for Media Alert is to set up the messaging that's going to be delivered at the event, right? It should feel seamless as you move from the Media Alert to the press release or the speaker script with the information that you're sharing. You need to succinctly give it the what, when, why of the news. And you should also describe what visuals are there for the broadcast media, like I just talked about. If there are opportunities for them to get pictures, if there's opportunity for them to film, if there's opportunity for them to interview people, whatever the case may be. Media alert should be one page, so it's easy to print if they choose to print it. When emailing it, just cut and paste it into the email. Don't send it as attachment. That's actually a best practice, period, when you're reaching out to media via email. Do not send attachments because they are likely to not see the attachment or pay attention to the attachment, don't have time to open it. You want them to see everything it is that you want them to know about right there in the email. So if I have a story, if I have a press release, I cut and paste it into the email. I never send attachment. Um, again, it should be one page. It shouldn't be long, especially for the type of work that you guys are doing. Sometimes when it's more yeah, formal or like, it's a big company, or if there's a lot of information that needs to be shared in the who, what, where, and why, it can be more than a page. But the general rule of thumb is to just have a page. You always want to have immediate contact, so that in the event that they are interested in attending and want to know a little bit more, maybe they want to know how media works. Do they need a media badge, or is there parking, such and such? There's the person they can talk about. And you want to have the registration on there, because a lot of times for this, you want people to register so you have an idea of what your count's looking like, who's coming, who's thinking about coming. A lot of times with media, they will RSVP quickly, maybe not quickly. With our media, African American media, they do not RSVP quickly. So, but a lot of times you'll be able to follow up with them and send them a reminder if you see that they've registered. Or on the flip side, if you see that someone hasn't registered, a particular outlet that you know you want to be there, you can reach out to them again and kind of give them a reminder. Hey, just reminding you, I sent you a media alert, on Monday, just the events tomorrow, just sending it back to you to keep it top of mind. Um, that is a media alert. So I would think that this is probably a tool that you guys can use, especially with your community newspaper, because again, a lot of times with these small community newspapers, they do like to cover um, events that have to do with their community. So if you know that you have something that's right there in the community and it's a Bakersfield newspaper and it's a Bakersfield event, you have a pretty good opportunity there to reach out to the Bakersfield media and present a compelling point as to why they should attend. Another commonly used tool is a PSA. Um, a PSA, it's a very short window of time to get across, probably one message point and a clear call to action for viewers and listeners. So this is more so PSAs, you use them more with TV and radio. I do have an example of a print PSA, but a print PSA can pretty much just look like a print ad, right? But you've seen PSAs on TV, you've heard them on the radio. It's more compelling when someone is speaking the words as to what it is that you want for the viewers or the listeners to know. They're issue-driven messages, and they can be used, like I said, they can be used for print, but usually it's broadcast, and they're meant to be published as is. So, like a press release or a letter to the editor, then there's not going to be any change to it. What you send or what you develop is what they're going to run. The goal of the PSA is to get someone to act or to change their behavior, even if it's not said directly. So we know a lot of times when it comes to drugs, everybody remembers that PSA, this is your brain on drugs, you want to say it without saying it, even though they did say it, but that was just, I always remember that one for some reason. I think because it was very poignant. Um, but like I said, you want to talk about it in a way that is receivable, whether it's compelling, the person listening to it or seeing it feels something about what you're saying, because it's usually an issue that's near and dear to people in some type of way. So again, it's going to be printed, it's going to be aired just as you send it over. You want to use language and images that are intentionally provocative. I love this image of this dad with his son. So many times dads get the bad rap that, they're not there, they're not apart. And I think that that picture really compels, that, hey, fathers matter too. So that goes along with just saying it should be provocative. It should it should hit a heartstring if it can. Some people it won't be, but if it can, you want it to move them a little bit. So the language might hit a little bit harder. You want to be clear. You want to be straight to what you're talking about because it's meant to be emotive. You want people to react off of the PSA that you see. Now, some PSAs are more lighthearted, so it just depends on the subject matter. So they all don't have to be harder. But a lot of times when there is a subject matter that people want to hit hard, they do use PSAs. PSAs are free too. That's another one. You can pay for a PSA, but it's also something that media outlets, if the issue that you're talking about is impactful enough, they will be really more willing to run it for free. So that's just something to remember, but it is paid for as well. Brevity is key. For example, for broadcasts, whether TV or radio, the windows are usually 15 to 30 seconds to get your point across. That's not a lot of time. So you want to be sure that you're staying clear on what you're trying to communicate. Um, yeah. So I won't keep talking about it, but you can imagine that you just want to make sure within those couple of seconds that you have that you're staying on point. The last commonly used tool, which I'm sure is probably the one you guys use all the time, and that's group meetings. This virtual world has just turned us into meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. It's become a really effective way for us uh, to get things done. Because all you got to do is log on, and you could be from home, you could be from your car, wherever you want to be. But I'm sure that you guys have been using group meetings with your colleagues and organizations. Um, you're likely to participate in a number of group meetings, like I said, where you both need to convey information and urge and guide action. So some general tips for group meetings is that you need to have a time or location that works for all. So that's talking about in person. So you need to make sure that it's someplace that people is easily accessible, people know, people can get to. But again, the virtual world has presented a whole another avenue for us, which really allows for us to be more efficient in the way that we meet. Have a clear, organized agenda to keep your discussion on track. You can go off track, one line item you have could lead to a whole nother conversation, which can be okay, but you just want to make sure that you're coming back to the main point, being mindful of time and people's time and staying on track so that you make sure that everything it is you want to discuss gets discussed. Have a assigned note taker, and it should not be you. Because of course you're concentrating on running your meeting, you're concentrating on discussing the key items that need to be discussed. So you can't do that. So you need to make sure you have somebody there. The beautiful thing again about the virtual world is that you can record it. You can go back to it and listen to it later. So whatever the case may be, just make sure that you're documenting what's going on. Um, Stay very top line. Details can be shared through follow-up materials. So, if you're talking about something, you find the conversation is lasting a little bit longer, it's getting a little bit more detailed than you intended for it to be, let people know that you'll follow up. You'll follow up with the materials that they can review, and then, you can follow up via email, or they can follow up with you via email. But you want to make sure that you're staying top line and keeping on point, especially because you've asked these people to come together, you've given them an agenda, and so again, you want to be respectful of their time. Um, Lastly, to keep the group organized and aligned, your messaging should be very straightforward and clear direction with a call to action. What is it you want people to do? What is it you need for people to do? What is it you're trying to get people to do? Etc. So I'm sure I won't spend a lot of time on group meetings because I'm sure that you guys are already using it. So the last module we're going to talk about is understanding how to select the right person to communicate your key messages. You've got these great key messages now. Who's supposed to be using them, right? We know that everybody in the organization can use them, but you do need to have one designated or two designated people that are your go-to. So if media wants to talk to somebody, or if there's a story somebody wants a contribution from your behalf, you want to make sure that you have that person. So the tips and tools we're going to discuss in this module are built to be helpful and quick and point you in the right direction. Why do you need a spokesperson? Well, the answer is very simple. Someone needs to tell your story, and you need to be able to help prepare them for speaking and interview opportunities to accomplish that goal of telling your story, right? More fundamentally, for working with media, again, it's important that you have somebody that's trained, comfortable, and is familiar with how to deal with media, because sometimes media can be a little much. Most of the time they're not, but at times it can be a little much. So you need somebody who's comfortable in their skin and comfortable in the position. A spokesperson is table stakes for getting media to cover your stories. You're offering this person up as somebody who can talk about your organization. It's the very first thing most reporters were asked when you approach them for a story with a story idea or some type of news offer. They'll say, "Do you have a spokesperson? Who can I talk to?" Um, a strong, well-prepared spokesperson is the second most important tool that you have to help earn the kind of coverage that you want, with a clear, organized, succinct message. You cannot just send your message to media and expect for it to be covered. You have to be able to deliver it through a person. Now, again, times you won't need a spokesperson. Some newspapers, some of these smaller papers don't need that. They just send me what you have. But in the event that you're reaching out a little bit larger, you always want to be prepared to have somebody who can be your spokesperson that you can offer up as a spokesperson. So once you have your messaging ready, you need to select the right person. You might already have them in mind. A lot of times it is your senior management, but it doesn't always have to be your senior management. It could be a project manager, somebody who's ingrained with what it is that you do day to day. And they actually might be the better spokesperson because they know it, right? Whereas maybe your CEO is a little less involved with it from day to day. So that's a decision you'll have to make on your own. But when selecting a spokesperson, there's some questions you should ask yourself to ensure you selected the right person, or at least selected somebody that can be successful in this role. Spokesperson is the public facing representative of your organization. So it's important to choose them carefully. They could be asked to do a variety of things, including quotes in materials, speaking in front of groups, being persuasive to audiences for your cause, conducting media interviews. There's a lot of different things that they might be asked to do. So it has to be someone that you're confident in um, can step into that role. In general, your spokesperson should be knowledgeable and credible about the topic at hand. They should speak well. They should be comfortable. They should have a friendly persona. They should have a tone that is welcoming, that makes somebody comfortable and doesn't put somebody on edge or get defensive. Because again, there might be times when your spokesperson is put into a position where media might ask them something they weren't quite prepared to answer, or might be a little bit, say something happens to your organization. I don't want to say a scandal, but let's just say something happens. Media might throw a whole bunch of different things at them. So it has to be somebody who can stay in that role as a spokesperson and to the best of their ability, stay unbothered, right? But hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully the spokesperson won't have to go through that. But that is something to think about as well. Um, I'm going to go through some questions to help you evaluate who should be your spokesperson or who you should be thinking of as your spokesperson. Who's the right person? Media really want someone in leadership or someone who is over a program. They want those type of people for interviews. They want them to have credibility in that area. So they have to be authentic with the connection at hand. You don't want somebody from your finance department talking about the program, because I'm not saying that they wouldn't know about it, but that's not their lane. They're in finance, right? Um, so you don't want to put them out there to the media, because it'll be apparent, the disconnect there if that's the person you have speaking on behalf of your organization. Does the person have the right expertise, right? Again, you need somebody with knowledge and experience in the field who can be positioned as a trusted person. They're credible. They know what they're talking about. They believe in it. They're not just somebody who's just talking the words. They actually believe in the words that they're saying and believe it'll come out in the way that they present and the way that they speak to people. If someone just doesn't want to be a spokesperson, do not make them. That's the worst thing you can do, is put somebody in a position that they don't want to be. So make sure that the person that you're looking at to be the spokesperson is open to it, interested in it, willing to be trained, willing to go through all that needs to be gone through in order to put them in a position to be as successful as possible in that role. because some people are just never going to get comfortable. Some people don't like talking in front of people, and that's okay. Strengths and weaknesses. I always say that. Know your strengths and know your weaknesses. Everybody's meant to do something, and not everybody's meant to be in front of people. Conversely, if someone's been a spokesperson in the past and has done it well and enjoyed it, that's important to be considered as well. So if you know somebody who does presentations, who tends to moderate or is in that type of lane, that is the type of person that you should target if you have the luxury of having somebody like that on your team or in your corner. Drilling down to media opportunities. If someone has done broadcast in the past and it's been a good experience, this is an important skill because again, broadcast is a whole different beast. TV, you're on TV. People are seeing what you look like. It's a little bit different when somebody is calling you and you're giving them answers over the phone. It's less intense. Um, Radio interview can be less intense too because they're not looking at you. However, you're still being heard. A lot of times it's live. So you just want to make sure somebody's comfortable with all of that. It's important to note that the success of an interview, it relies half on what the person says and about half about how they say it. So both of them work together. Yes, they're listening to what you're saying, but they're listening to how you say it. So if someone is naturally a quiet person and it's difficult for them to be interviewed, that's not the right person. I think I've made my point. So just make sure that you're being smart when you're looking at your spokespeople. So again, we talked about diverse media because they work differently. So you just want to make sure that you take that into account when you're choosing the right spokesperson. So think about language skills and community relevance. It's important to have a person speak in a language, but it's not always necessary. Sometimes reporters want them in language, sometimes they don't, but it's good to have somebody that can do both if you have that capability. We don't always have it, and it's okay if you don't. Diverse media like showcasing their own. So they love to present successful members of his community doing outstanding work and leading the ways for others. So when looking for a diversity spokesperson, think about people who have stories that can inspire. You know, that would be more compelling because maybe if they were able to overcome a challenge of some sort specific to that community and talk about how they got to where they are today, that makes them more compelling. Um, Reach out to coalition partners and other local organizations. If you don't have someone in your immediate organization that can be a spokesperson, because chances are they might help you to identify somebody who's doing some amazing work and has a great personality that they might be willing to align with your organization. Um, you can also work with potential spokespeople to prepare him and them or prepare them for interviews. If it's somebody that's outside of your organization, you can help prepare them within your organization. So most of the time you want them to be from your organization, but sometimes you just don't have it there. So just look for people in your community that possibly can align with what your brand is. It's okay if they're not necessarily a part of your organization. We are coming to the close, so there's just one more thing that I want to talk to you quickly about, and that's prepping your spokesperson. Now you've identified them. Let's talk about getting them ready for the media interview because there is some legwork to help them get ready and fully prepared. Put the time into properly training your organization spokesperson. Conduct multiple training sessions if necessary, conduct mock interviews, bring people into the room so they have to be a little uncomfortable talking in front of other people. Throw questions at them that they might not be familiar with, just because you want them to get that experience to know how to stay on course. We won't discuss it today, but there are actually some key phrases that if a spokesperson gets off track because of something that a reporter throws at them, they're key phrases that can help you get back to the issue at hand. Even though you're being interviewed, you can still control the narrative. So I encourage you to put the time and the energy into doing that research and properly media training that person so that they're comfortable and prepared. So to wrap up today's session, I know that we've covered a lot, but I hope that there's something that you've heard that's been useful to you. I hope that you're connecting this session with the last section because it all works together. And of course, we have one more session that will tie it all together as well. So as I wrap up today, I want to talk about what I talked about. So I talked about the importance of a key message, right? I talked about how to develop a key message, the power of three, the main idea, proof, call to action. I talked about how to use your key messages. And lastly, I talked about identifying a spokesperson to communicate your key messages. Right on time, 9:55. I hope that you guys are still awake. I hope that you enjoyed it. Really hope that it's sinking in how all of these things work together, because you're going to hear certain things over and over again, and that's because they all work together for your communication goals. So thank you. We made it. Key Messages 101 is complete, and I appreciate that you joined me today. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday, November 10th for the final session of this three-part series, and that's going to be How to Engage Media 101. We're going to take session 1, session 2, we're going to put it all together and do session 3. So we'll discuss the tools you'll need to engage media, and the next time we'll talk about execution. With that said, have a fabulous Thursday. I'm going to have a fabulous Thursday to set my day off perfectly to be able to present this information to you. So with that said, have a good one.